Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back to this hands-on with Maxon intro to rigging. My name's Ellie and I'm a trainer at Maxon. And for the final time for this workshop, but hopefully not the final time forever, I am joined by New York animator Joe Herman. How's it going, Joe?
Hey Ellie, great to see you again. Thanks
Great to see you too.
for
Can you
everybody
believe it's
for coming.
the final week? I can't believe
Yeah,
it. I can't believe we're already on part 6.
yeah, it's great. I want to thank everybody for being here, and thanks for those who came to. I already see a few people again, like Burned. I saw your stuff, Burned. I sent you a message. I don't know if you got it, but I certainly remember Electric Image back from way back in the day. And Hannah, I see Hannah too. Nice,
Yeah,
nice
it's great to
work.
see the regulars, isn't it?
But
And
yeah,
we've got
that's great.
we've got a bunch of other people as well in the chat as well. So you know we love to shout them out, don't we, Joe? So we can say
Go
hey
for
to
it.
Jim. We've got Alejandro, Charles, and then yeah, Bernd and Hannah and David, and hey to Neil, Bruce, Erwin, Enno, and Alan. It's yeah, thanks for joining us again. It's nice to see some people who have kind of been on every single part of this workshop with us. But if you are joining us for the first time, then welcome and
Yeah.
thanks for being here live with us. We appreciate
I
it.
feel like this is like a little bit of a wrap party or something, as we
Yeah.
wrap up the course. But
Yeah, final week. And so speaking of, the workshop, we have been breaking this down into kind of individual parts. And, as we said, we're now on the final part, which is part 6. But here is the way that we broke it down. And what's great is you can actually head over to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel and you can catch up on all of these sessions because they are all recorded. As we can see here, we've got final part on April 20th, which is today. And just some extra bits. As we said, all these sessions are recorded and they get uploaded onto the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. So I can share a link for that if you guys would like. And you also have unlimited access to all the project files. So those of you who have been part of this workshop with us will know that Joe has been putting together some great project files for the entire of this workshop, and he's done the same today. We've got a couple we can get into a little bit later on. So if you can't find those links, they should be in the handout section of GoToWebinar, but they're not always there, or it can't always be seen. And so if you can't see it, let me know. And in the questions area, I can link you to any of the stuff you need, for example, project files, Maxon events page, and our YouTube channel as well. And finally, don't forget to follow Joe on his socials. So Twitter and Instagram, we've got @Joe Herman, and then on YouTube, he is Legend Multimedia. You might see if
actually,
you've
it's
been.
at Joe Herman Artist, but on Twitter and Instagram. At Joe Herman
Okay,
Artist.
I can
But
update that
yeah, go
before
ahead.
we
It's
end
okay.
this. But yeah, I was just going to say, if any of you have been kind of commenting on the YouTube videos, you'll know that Joe is pretty active on YouTube and likes to reply to your questions, which
Yeah.
we all appreciate, Joe. So part 6. So Joe, did you want to dive into what we're going to be looking at the next
Sure.
couple of hours?
Absolutely. So well, actually, I'll say that later. But so today, what we're going to do is we're going to start out by talking about IK dynamics and how to create secondary motion with that. So we're going to look at, this is a wonderful way for you to save a ton of time to create like floppy ears or ponytails or, a flower sticking out of somebody's hat or antennas on an alien or whatever that, you're going to be moving a character around and, you want these things to react a little bit and you don't necessarily want to keyframe them because you'll spend your whole time keyframing secondary motion. You can do it that way. So what we're going to be using is we're going to be learning about IK dynamics, which is going to automate that whole process for you. We're also going to choose how to see how we can use IK dynamics to create really cool effects like an undulating tail, let's say, for example, like a sea creature in the bottom of the sea, and you can sort of like, have the tail of it, flip around and stuff like that. So that's all with this IK dynamics. Then we're going to look at something else, which is not really related, but kind of related. It's called Spline Ik. And you'll see what that is. And we're going to rig a snake up with that. And then we're going to talk about the Pose library, which is a really useful tool inside of Cinema 4D. So we're going to take a look at that. And then we're going to sort of like start a little discussion on facial animation and facial rigging. The thing is that facial rigging is kind of like a whole nother rabbit hole that you can go in there and you can get lost in that. And, you know, it's like another, you know, there's no way that we can really expect to get that into this course. So, you know, we can, maybe that'll be done for a different day or something like that. But we can start talking about it a little bit and maybe start, you know, time permitting, get into that a little bit too. And that is what we're going to talk about today.
Cool, that sounds great. So I've noticed that a few people are saying that the link is broken.
I did want to mention
in
that
the
to you.
handout section.
Yeah.
So what I'll do, I'll grab another link so everyone has it immediately, and then I'll work on fixing that over this next couple of hours. So yeah, it should be sorted soon. I'm on it.
Yeah, great.
Cool. So yeah, I don't want to take up any of your time, Joe, with this intro. I just want to kind of like get into, because it looks like we've got so much that we're going to be going through today. So
Right.
yeah, I'm gonna just fire this straight over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't forget everyone, in the questions area, that's where you can ask Joe your questions. He keeps an eye on it, and I'll be keeping an eye on it as well. And we can ask them live, and we can, you know, answer them in the background as well.
Yep. Okay, let me just, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay,
all good.
Great. So actually, before I begin, I can read the comments today. Thanks, Jim, for the donuts. And by the way, Kent, I did see your chat, your message and the last thing. And thanks so much for coming to all the classes. Kent is a good friend of mine from New York and a talented artist as well. And people from Hamburg, Seattle, that's great. And just Ellie's going to keep an eye on the comments, but before I begin, I'll just take a look at them again. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you, No. Hey, Joe and Ellie. Nice to be back on the greatest webinar ever. Wow, that's great. Thank you. And California. Yes, there was big Maxon news today. I am, by the way, using a pre-release of R26 here. But you know, I'm not an expert at all that's new, but there are a few changes that I've noticed. But this is R26, and there's something else that I saw in here. Where do we send our checks for this great learning? Well, you can contact me, and I'll let you know. But anyway, thanks, Jim, for that. And so let's just get started, I guess. So before we begin, I guess what I'll do, I'll hide my webcam, and I'll bring it back at the end. So I wanted to mention that some people actually have done some nice things actually as well, you know, which I always like to look at, using some inspiration, some of the techniques from the course. So I did want to start with that because those are a lot of fun to look at, and thank you so much for doing them. They're inspiring, and hopefully other people will get inspired. What is this thing at the top? Okay. All right, actually, you know what? So there's this one here from I can't really pronounce your name. I don't even want to try because I'm just going to embarrass myself, but you can read his name right here. Okay. And it's kind of like he just made a 2D version of the claw kind of coming in and passing it to another claw and putting it on these little things. It's very cute, and I think it's really smooth, and it's a nice job. Can you see that, Ellie, okay?
Yep. Playback's good.
Cool. So so that's a fun little animation that somebody did. And then somebody on Instagram has just been making, he also, by the way, he also did one before also on a lamp, and he's got a little jump in it as well. And he's he did sort of like what we were doing in the first class. So he's been, he gets a little gold star for extra credit there as well. And thank you for the inspiration and everything. There's also this person who actually I saw one this week, but then I realized that I hadn't really seen them before. But he's kind of like been doing stuff every course on Instagram. Whoops, this is going right away. But how I felt before this session with Joe, homework fun, and there's this one here, which is kind of like, I guess he did the bird with some kind of an ocean. Really cool stuff, and a really cool bird as well. Very cool. Put some lights in the eyes. So great stuff there. And then he also did, he did a lot of stuff. He did this one, it says, let me just say, it says, a little work in progress from this week's Maxon class. Incredible session by Joe Herman. Thanks. Thank you. And let's take a look at what this one is. So really cool stuff. And it looks like he was using C motion for this. So I don't know if you're here, but Dave, I see your chat there. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm not sure that you were going to be here, but was this C motion that you were doing here? Anyway, it's awesome stuff, and really like it. Cool. I see that C motion. Yes. So really great stuff. And he's got more. He's been doing stuff. I somehow was missing this, but let's just do this one more time. He's got hair, I can see. He's got hair also on the characters. He's got this one, which was really impressive, actually. First of all, it says, Maxon character object comes alive after 4 to 6 incredible sessions with Joe Herman. Thanks. And plus Ellie's gummy bear tips. I'm not really sure what Ellie's gummy bear tips are, but you're probably using the character animation. You've got a great.
I think, yeah. So I think the gummy bear tips it's the material. So it's subsurface scattering.
Oh, okay, so it's got some surface scattering. I didn't notice that. And it looks like you've got some, I don't know if you were using Ik dynamics, which is what I'm going to show today, to get some of the secondary motion on the rig. But really, really nice work, by the way. I wanted to give it some exposure because these are really nice pieces, actually. And you could see even the skeleton inside the fish. Great job rigging this. Great job animating this. Awesome. I like how it comes into the mouth at the end. We're getting swallowed by the fish. I put bones in the fish with Ik dynamics. Very cool. So he sort of prefigured the class right there, and then you're in the fish. So very nice, and I love the material. Let's take a look at the next one. We've got, so I can see he started working a little bit. This one says, can't believe there's only one more Joe Herman artist rigging session. This is how I'll feel. So I guess he'll feel cut off, like his belt went. But I can see that he's starting with the character object here and getting a really great, this is also a really nice piece out in space. Very cool.
They look great. They really do.
And then there's one more, which is bumbling early play with a character and rig with so much work to do. Excited and sad for the last session with Joe tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much, David. And I'm sort of sad as well. And I think I can speak for Ellie too, but sort of jumping in. I suppose you rigged this with the biped. With the biped rig. And I love this effect that you did in the front, like if it's out of a camera. A little bit of video noise there. So that is very cool as well. Cool. Did you use, like, did you alter the model that we were using in the class for that, or I know, and I see you use red giant effects for the this is great stuff, man. So definitely, if you want, you can follow him on Instagram, Space VRX. And big shout out and thank you to David for doing this cool work and being inspired by what we've been doing in the class. Thank you. What'd you think, Ellie?
Yeah, I mean, it's all incredible stuff. It's
Yeah.
so great to see what people create and like artists create based on, especially like these workshops. It's amazing. I love like the character with the eye. Like I
Yeah,
think
that
is
was
so
awesome. Did I
it's
show
so
this one? Actually, I'm not sure. This was another one sort of based on the bird. Hold on. I don't think I showed this one either.
that's amazing.
So nice, we've got to watch it twice. And the music, it's really nice.
So yeah, we don't get audio through
Yeah,
it, but
great stuff. This is a beautiful piece. Really a beautiful piece. I mean, it seems like you've been into rigging a little bit, but you're using the C motion stuff and all the other things. So great stuff. David Scudder, his name is Space VRX. Excellent work. Thank you, David. Keep in touch. So there we go. So we've got, thanks for the work over here. And I just wanted to say that I might be doing some, Ellie mentioned it, some supplemental stuff on my channel to the work that I'll be doing with the Maxon training team. So you might want to come. I changed the name to Joe Hermit Legend Multimedia. This is the way my channel looks. I sometimes do reviews. Once in a while, I play the piano too. I haven't been posting that much lately, but I'm planning to really start posting a lot more and a lot of rigging stuff. So, but it's going to be like supplemental stuff and short stuff. I might do some, quick videos, but actually I'll be posting a lot of stuff relating to rigging and stuff. So come on over and join up. I want to get more active in that aspect as well as, here as well. So, what else? I guess that's it. I guess we're ready to begin. So, let is go ahead and let us begin. So, we're going to start today with IK dynamics. So, what are IK dynamics? So, let's actually just go in a new file, and we're just going to go to like a front view or a right view. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn on snapping, okay? And in our snap settings, we're gonna enable snap, right? We're going to snap to the grid work plane here, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of joints. So we're gonna go into the character menu. We're gonna open up our character. Menu here. We're going to rip it off. And we're going to go to the joint tool. And let's just create a bunch of bones. Let's create, for example, let's say we'll make each bone, for example, like 4 grid units in size. And let's create 8 of these. So that is 5, right? Yeah. 6, 7, 8. Oops. 8. So we've got 8 joints, and they're all listed here, and they're in a root null. That's okay. I don't care. I'll leave them in a root null right now. And let's turn off snapping, so we're not snapping anymore. And what we want to do is we want to go to the first joint right here, and we want to right click it, and under rigging tags, we want to go to, we want to set up an IK tag, okay? And as usual, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the tag here, and we're going to choose the last joint in the chain. We're going to make that the end joint, okay? And so what we've been doing so far, I mean, a lot of times when we've been using IK tags, is that we've been clicking this add goal button, which gives us like a goal, right? So we're going to click on this goal, which is right here, and it's been giving us a way that we can, you know, control the whole chain by moving this goal around, which is useful because this could be some kind of an arm, you know, that if you wanted to put 8 joints in the arm to give it sort of like this claw, or if you want to make it sort of like the neck of a dragon or anything, you know, or like the tentacle of an octopus, you know, you could use it with that goal here. We've been maybe, I think one time we made it with 3 joints, but you can make it with as many joints as you want. However, with IK dynamics, you don't really use goals. So we're going to kill the goal because we're not going to use it. If you want to get like a really dynamic sort of like this type of thing, which was done with let's see if I have it here. This was done with spline dynamics, which Ellie just informed me that she's going to do a presentation on N8B about spline dynamics. So you might want to check that out when that's available. But you can see that this is different. This is actually like, if you want this type of things, this is not the kind of IK we're going to be doing. I mean, we're not going to use IK dynamics for this. This is spline dynamics, something that is very different, okay? Or not very different, but different, okay? So that's not what we're going to be doing here. What we're going to be doing here, we're going to get rid of that goal, and we're going to be clicking on the IK tag, okay? And for now, what we're going to do, you know, we've talked about pole vectors, we've talked about squash and stretch, but we're going to talk about something new. It's called dynamics, okay? And we're going to enable the dynamics, okay? Now, as soon as I do that, as soon as I enable the dynamics and I press play, okay, you can see that immediately our IK chain is reacting to some dynamics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change, actually, let me move this over to the side because, you know, I've got this auto hide on the taskbar and it's like not auto hiding. So let me change this to 300. I hate when it does that. It looks like I'm out of space here. Let me close. Well, whatever. Anyway, so as you can see here that this is now reacting to dynamics here. So basically what we've got there is if I take the root now, you know, and I move it around, you can see that if this was attached to like the back of a horse or something, this could be easily his tail. You could rig a tail like that, you know. If I go to a top view, okay, like for example, like this top view, and I put this on the back of a dog, you know, you could make a wagging tail, okay. There's lots of other things now, like for example, on the IK tag under the dynamics, I can lower the strength of it, okay. So now it's a much more floppier thing. You know, if you, maybe this would be kind of like a braid on something, or it could be some kind of other thing. Okay, that's just hanging down. Then obviously if I up the strength on it, now it becomes a lot more rigid. See, like if you wanted to have it a really rigid IK dynamic system. And there are other things too, like if I lower the strength, okay, like way down, like, oh, well, I'll put it to about 20, okay? And I up the drag, okay, now there's some resistance to it. So this could work good if you don't really want them to flop around so much. Maybe it's made out of like silk or something, or a wispy fabric, so it wouldn't have a lot of mass to it, okay? And the other thing that this is really good for is if you want to, if it's underwater or something, you know, if it's in some sort of a medium or a liquid or underwater, you know, you could up the drag. It will look a lot more realistic. And then there's others too. There's this position hold, which kind of looks like strength, but it's a little bit different. Let me lower the drag down back to 2. Okay, and you can see that, you know, it's a little bit different. It just didn't hold the position. If you lower this too much, by the way, you get this really weird thing where it's just like falls in this thing. So you don't really want to mess around with that. You know, usually leave it at 100 and usually leave it at 100 or maybe a little bit less. And then there's rotation hold, which once again kind of looks a little bit like strength. Okay, but it doesn't hold the rotation as much, whereas if you up it a lot, it does hold the initial rotation as well. You know, so it does actually work a little bit different than strength. See, there's a lot more bounce to it. So those are the controls with the dynamic tags over here. Now, something else, actually, let's kind of go back to like its default thing. What was rotation hold? I don't remember. Let me try to undo. There. So we've got that, okay? Let me lower the strength a little bit so it's a little bit less floppy. And the thing is that there's also, for example, like under forces, there's gravity. So if you want, you could make it like a positive gravity for whatever reason. So it would go up the other way, okay? And now, you know, you've got this thing going the other way if you ever wanted that to happen. Or you could have no gravity at 0. And this is kind of useful, kind of like for fish and stuff. Or you might want to put like just a little bit of gravity, because underwater, there's really not a lot of gravity, but there might be some pull from the earth, you know, but there's so much stuff in there that, you know, you don't want to have it pulling down too much, but, you know, you can have something like that, have this swimming along or whatever. So let's actually take, so there's something else here too. So let's put the gravity back on. Dynamics. Right, oops, okay. So I think we'll make this around whatever, 22, there we go. That's fine. So we've got this back on, but I've got the gravity. I guess it didn't undo the gravity. So the gravity was about 9.5 or something. Okay, so now we've got this thing. So what you can do is you can actually create kind of like a sphere, right? So we'll make that bigger, okay? And we'll give that, for example, like 32 segments, okay? And in the IK tag, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, first of all, I'm going to say enable collisions, okay? And I can bring that sphere into the colliders, okay? And now what happens is that if I take this thing, oops, and, you know, drag it over here, you can see that it kind of collides with the IK tag, which is very useful, obviously, and can be used in a lot of things. So whether you move the sphere or you move the IK chain, okay, you know, you're getting like a nice, you know, interaction with other objects. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay. You know, there you go. So that's that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create like a real world example of when we would want to use this by, if we open up our project file, the first one actually would be called antennas, right? And just imagine that this is some kind of a Martian that has antennas, okay? And so what we want to do is we want to rig this so it has some Spline Ik, I mean not Spline Ik, so Ik dynamics on these antennas so that they react with secondary motion. Now this could be a dog if we maybe made this a little wider. Maybe that could be some floppy ears or something that are flopping around. But I guess a dog wouldn't be green, so we'll stick with Martian for now. But could be anything that has antennas or floppy ears or whatever. So what we're going to quickly do is we're going to go to a front position, okay? And we're going to choose our joint tool, put symmetry on, okay? So we want to draw it with symmetry. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the first joint to be kind of like maybe right around here, somewhat into the head, okay? So we'll go like over here. And then the second one we're going to do right in the center of this edge loop. Okay. And the third one we're going to do sort of right into the center of this edge loop. And the final one right around here. Okay. So we've got both of these bones because we were drawing in symmetry. And once again, you know, we've covered some of this in earlier classes, so I guess I'm going to go somewhat quickly. I'm just going to call them antenna. Oops. Antenna, right? And on this one, I'll go back to the naming tool. Okay, tools, and we'll say naming tool, and we'll go with replace name. Oops. These are the right antennas, so we're gonna, I undid that by the way. So we're gonna put an R underscore as a prefix and that a dash and an increment number as a suffix, okay? And we're gonna do this with the other side, but with the other side, what we're going to do is go back to the naming tool. And we're gonna say on the other side, we're gonna, since this is the left, we're gonna give it an L underscore and then the suffix of the number. And we are going to replace that name. And there we have it. And why are we doing this? I wish I could ask you guys to see if you're paying attention, actually. But we're doing this so that way when we start weighting with the weight tool, whatever we weight to the R underscore joints are going to be flipped, are going to be mirrored onto the L underscore joints and vice versa. So I'm sure that you would have answered me correctly if I did ask you. I guess you could answer in the chat, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the weight tool and we're going to go to the symmetry and we see that it's all set up. L is L underscore, R is R underscore. And now we can go to the, let's take off the subdivision surface, okay? And what's the first thing that we have to do is we have to give this sphere like a weight tag. If this is going fast for you, that's because I covered it in previous classes. And then we're going to take a skin object here and we're going to make that a child. And now we're ready to do some weighting. Now I did notice I'm going to choose the shift key and double click on the weight tag, and that's going to bring up my weight manager automatically. I think I mentioned that once in a previous class, rather than going to the character menu and choosing weight manager here. Okay. And then I'm going to dock this to my usual little position right here and make it a little bit smaller. And there is something that I forgot to do, okay, is in my weight, I'm going to select all these joints, and then in my weight tag, under the joints list, I'm going to drag these joints right in. Oh, then there's something else that I wanted to create, actually, which I forgot to do. and that's, I'm going to go to the front view, okay? And I want to create like a head joint, okay? So the thing is, I'm going to take my joint tool. I'm going to take off symmetry because this is only going to be a single bone, okay? And I want it to be right in the center of the world. So I'm actually going to click it, make it out here, and in the joint coordinates, I'm going to just zero out its X, so it's right in the center of the world. Now, by the way, if you wanted to create another joint, you know, you're going to create, am I in the center or not? It looks like I'm in the center, but an easier way to do that is just to take this joint and control drag it so it makes a copy of it, make it a child of the first joint, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the object mode or the model mode and just drag it up. So you know that those joints are exactly in the same place on the x-axis. So that's a little tip that you can use. And I'm going to call this joint, I'm going to call it head. And I'm going to call this other joint, I'm going to call it head tip. And what we'll do is I will go ahead and also drag that into the weight tag. So that way, because you can see it's not appearing in this list. And the way that you would make it appear in this list is you don't drag it into here. So you can't drag it into here. You have to drag it into the weight tag. Okay, and then it will appear in here. Head. Why didn't head tip go in there? But it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to weight anything to the head tip. But if you wanted it in there, you can also drag it in there as well. And then it will appear in there. So now we've got it all set up to begin our weighting. Okay. And now you'll notice actually, and we don't have auto weights because we didn't use the bind command. That's how we would have gotten our auto weights. But so you notice that in previous classes, when we're ready to start, the whole thing was black. Okay. By the way, I'm going to switch to my point mode because you have to be in point mode in order to start weighting, and you have to select this. So this has to be selected. You have to be in point mode, and you need the weight manager up. That's what you need to start weighting. A few people asked in the comments like why I couldn't see the weighting, and maybe that's why. Now in previous classes, you'll notice that this thing was kind of black here when we were about to start our weighting, and now it's gray. I think this is something they changed in S26, okay? But it doesn't matter, it works exactly the same way, it's just not black anymore, okay? So, but it works the same way. So we're gonna click on the head joint, okay? And we're gonna take our weight tool. We're gonna make sure symmetry is enabled. And we're gonna start weighting to that head joint. You can see that it's weighting, since it's a single joint, it's smart enough to weight on both sides. Okay, and we're just gonna weight all of these points to that head joint. Okay, we're just gonna, but it's set, by the way, it's set to 100% absolute. So we're weighting all of these points 100% absolutely to the head joint. Okay, and there we go. We're all done. So now what we're going to do is we're going to choose the head and the R antenna 0, which is this joint here, okay, which will distribute the weights half on half. If you're at 100, okay, which we are, we're at 100, we're going to deliver that so it's like 50 and 50 onto those two joints. Oops. Weight tool. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to weight those like that. And because it's going to be weighted symmetrically onto the other side. One is R antenna 0, the other one is L antenna 0. So now we're going to go to the next two joints. This should be old hat to everybody by now because we've done this on multiple occasions, but it doesn't hurt to drill it into us again, okay, just so we're very comfortable with the whole weighting workflow. Okay. Oh no, and then for these on the top, so let me just make sure. This is 0 and 1, 1 and 2, and then these on the top just go to 2. You just weight them to 2. Nothing rarely gets weighted to the tips. Sometimes you might though. There might be reasons why you want to weight to a tip, but generally they're just there just so you can see the bone. But so that's why we're weighting to number 2. But you can actually weight it to number 3. But either one, it's up to you. All right, so now basically this thing is weighted, completely weighted now. You can see all the weights have been done. Okay, and head R antenna 0, head L antenna 0. Okay, it's done. So now we're going to put our subdivision surfaces back on, right? And if we were to actually, we don't need the weight manager anymore, so we might as well just hide it, okay, and get back to the thing. So you can see that if I were to go to like R antenna 0 and go back to the model mode, okay, and we were to take the rotation tool and rotate that joint, you can see that the antenna is now weighted to these joints like that. Okay, so now I want to take the head now. So for example, let's say I wanted to take the head, and let's say I wanted to animate the whole head moving around. So I go ahead to move the head around, and oops, what's going on here? Something's not going on, or something's going wrong here. Okay, so that's because we haven't made the antennas children of the head. So we're just going to do that really easily by taking the 2 antennas and make them children of the head, and we will get some feedback, some connecting bones here to say that it is connected. So now, for example, if I were to go ahead with the head and sort of move it around, now everything is following along nicely. So now the thing is that, let's say, for example, I wanted to animate this head, you know, let's say he was like looking down and looking back up and looking down again, or if he was twisting like this way and then twisting this way, we want to get some nice secondary motion on these tentacles, okay, or these antennas. So otherwise you'd have to like move them, go down, and then we'd have to go back and rotate, you know, maybe this going back up, and then rotate the other one, you know, keyframe this, you know, and keyframe that. And then when he goes the other way, you know, we'd have to this way, you know, then we'd have to go back and keyframe this one, you know, going back, and this one going back like this, and then this one going back like that. And you'd have to do that on both. Oops. And you'd have to do trial and error so that it looks good, and then you're there all day, okay, trying to animate this kind of stuff. But not to worry, because we're going to do it the easy way, okay? We're going to press the easy button. Wasn't there an easy button? At least in the States, there was a commercial for Staples, which is a store here. And they had like the easy button. And they were like, wouldn't it be nice if we had an easy button? You just pressed it and it became easy. And of course, there's no button like that, but there is actually. There's an easy button, and we're about to press it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this first bone in this chain. We're going to right click it, and we're going to give it a IK tag. Okay, we're going to do the same with this one over here. Okay, so we've gotten 2 IK tags, and then what we're going to do is we're going to, in the tag, we're going to go ahead for the last joint. Okay, and we're going to click the end. We're going to give it an ending. Okay, we're going to go to this one too, and we're going to click the end of this chain, okay? And we're not going to set up any goals because we don't want goals here, okay? IK dynamics are generally done without goals, whereas IK, like in the case of IK feet or IK hands, they need goals, okay? So that's an important thing to understand, because you might just be like, oh, I'm setting up an IK chain. Oh, let me add, you know, like a goal here, and then it's not going to work with that. So we don't want goals, okay? So now on this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to select both of these tags, and we're going to enable, we're going to go to the Dynamics tab, okay? And we're going to enable the dynamics, right? So now as soon as I press play, these things start to droop a little bit because there's some gravity involved and some other stuff. So now if I choose the head, okay, and if I go ahead with the head, and if I start animating, you know, the head rotating back and forth, or if I animate the head sort of twisting, you know, this way or this way, you see there's some nice secondary motion going on the head. Oops. And that's the easy button, okay? So for example, if I were to sort of have him, you know, let's say he was going a little nuts, you know, you have it, or to back down like this, or, you know, or he was going back, okay? You have just some nice dynamics happening onto the head. Or if he was, you know, moving up and down, like riding on a bumpy bus, you've got it going like that. So, so now, of course, you can do some stuff like you can select these two. And what you can do is you can actually go ahead. Let's go to a front view. Okay. So if you want, you can, I don't know, you can up the gravity like a little bit, but then that'll make these things look really heavy. So let's say we said -20. Okay. So now you've got them that there's much more gravity, but they kind of don't move that much, but gravity's pulling them more of them. So what we're going to do instead is let's go ahead and we'll, you know, have the rotation. Let's try to take the rotation hold and lower that. Okay, so you can see that we lower the rotation hold, okay, like that, and we go to the head, and we're, you know, now they're more floppy, okay, and we'll also lower the strength down a little bit. So if you're doing like beagle's ears or something, you know, like a dog ears, you know, you could, for example, lower, you know, you can have something like that. Okay.
Hey Joe, I've got a
Yes.
quick question
Sure.
from Sharon that's related
Yes.
to exactly what you're doing, so I thought I'd interrupt and ask if that's
No
okay.
problem.
So she's wondering, how come you don't have the head tip on the edge of the head geometry instead of sticking above it?
How come we don't have a head tip on the head? Oh,
So
because
why
here's the
why
thing.
wouldn't you have the head tip on the edge of the head
Instead of
geometry
sticking
instead of
out like
sticking above it?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. And the real reason is that, to be honest with you, we don't need this head tip at all, because we still have that joint there. Okay. So actually I can take the head, right? I can still take this head and move it around. It's still behaving exactly the same. Or if I wanted to, I can rotate it, right? Like that. So the thing is that we only really have that head tip there, just so we know there's a bone there, that there's an extra joint there. Okay. So really we can just put it anywhere we want. We can have it like here if we want. Okay. Or you can put it right here if you want, because there's nothing weighted to it. You see, if there was something weighted to it, it kind of would matter where it is. Okay. And sometimes you do weight to tips. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to do that. But here, nothing's weighted to it. It's just really to create this, so we can put it up here if we want. It's just really to create this visual cue that there's a bone there. Does that answer the question?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So now, so actually, let's go ahead and now something else that you'll notice here. Let's actually put a little bit more strength in. Actually, let's actually pause. Are there any other questions at this point?
Yes, there are a couple. So Anders was wondering, can the ears collide with its own body?
You know, there doesn't seem to be a way to do that. So what you can do, okay, because if you look at the IK tag under the collisions, you know, you have to put itself, and if you put itself in it, okay, it kind of gets weird. So what you can do is you can create a sphere or any shape really, you know, that's more or less the size of this thing, and you could drag that into the colliders, and then it will, and then you make it that you can't see it, and you could do that, because what happens is that, well, look what happens if I try to drag itself into the colliders. So for example, let's say I go ahead to the IK tags and I make it like really floppy, so I'll just lower the rotation, hold a lot. And as a matter of fact, you know what? We'll do that later because I wanted to show you something. So hold that thought for a second. So any other questions?
Yes. So Eduardo was wondering, what's the best way to mix this IK dynamic system with a rig made with the character tool?
Yes, yes. That's a really good question, okay? So what you would do is in the rig made with the character tool, okay, if let's say you made a character object and you wanted to add some antennas to your character, right? So for example, if I were to open up, let's see, where is it actually? Okay, so here's something that we made already, right? So let's say, for example, I wanted to create some antennas coming out of his head. Okay, so you know, whatever, I would go ahead and I'd create a joint chain, you know, whatever, like coming out of his head, right? And where is that joint chain? That joint chain happens to be a child of the hand. Why? Because the hand was selected when we started using it. So I'm going to take it out of the child of the hand, right? So what I can do is on the character object, right? I can go ahead and I can say under the display, under the managers, because we want to see it in the managers, right? So I could say in the managers, I can say full hierarchy. Now you have access to the full hierarchy of the display, or I don't have to go full hierarchy. I could just say controllers. Okay, now you just have the controllers. Okay. And what I can do is I can tell this joint over here, let me make this a little bit smaller. Okay. So on this joint here, what I can do is I can give it a constraint. So I go to the rigging tag. This is a very good question, by the way. I can give it a constraint, okay? And I can give it a parent constraint. And for its parent, which is here somewhere, if you don't know where it is, you can just simply, well, first of all, let me lock this. Okay, under parent, actually, I'll lock that. So first I gave it a parent constraint, then I went to the parent tab. So now what, so that's locked, right? So I can click on, now I can click on the head control, which is this control. And I can go over here, I can press the S button, which brings up, which exposes this head control. And I can drag that to the the target of the parent constraint. And now what happens is that if I go to the thing, you know, and if I go to the rotation tool, and if I rotate it, you see how it's moving with the head, okay? And then what I would do is I would just set up the IK. You know, I'd set up the IK tag. Oops. And for the last one, let me unlock this under tag. I put this as my last joint in the tag. Okay. And then I enable the dynamics. You know, and we'll kind of make it floppy a little bit and press play a little bit. Okay, so now what happens is that I only have 90 frames here, but what happens is if I go to the head, I'll have to do this fast within the 30 frames. So I'll wait for it to start over again. But see now if I move it, do you see how it's reacting? It's reacting like it's reacting to the motion of that thing. So that's how you would attach it to the character object. And that was a very good question. Who asked that, by the way?
So that was Eduardo.
Very good question, Eduardo. That's how you would do it. You would put a constraint onto it and you could constrain it to part of the character object. Does that answer the question?
Yes, he's put in the chat. Amazing for your answer, Joe. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, excellent. So, great question. Let's get back to the thing, because actually if you go back to here, if I press play, you see that, look at the first joint in the chain, okay? Kind of doesn't move. Really the IK dynamics are happening on the second and third joints, right? Do you see that? This is kind of frozen. See that, Ellie, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
So like, what if you want the whole chain to have like kind of like some dynamics? So not a problem. What you could do is you could actually take these two joints, right, and drag them up to the head joint. So now they're actually on this joint over here, the head joint. Now if I press play, that whole thing is kind of like part of it, okay? And now the thing is, now it really looks like a dog, right? So the thing is that now, for example, if I were to, you know, move this around, now this kind of looks like a dejected dog, doesn't it? But don't worry, little guy, things are looking up, so you can make them look up. But you can see that, by the way, this is a very droopy IK system, but you can see that do I have drag on this? Take off collisions. Well, drag is, but I think I have the rotation hold should be a little bit more, like maybe up to here, to 22. And the strength may be a little bit higher. Okay, so there should be maybe both around 40. Okay, and now basically you've got, they're not quite as, you know, like that. So now, but let's say they were really like that, you know, let's say, for example, you know, you wanted, let's say they were really droopy. Actually, I'm sorry that I did this because I wanted to answer that other question about self collisions. Because if you look, they kind of like, if I were to move this quickly, you know, they're kind of colliding with themselves. See, actually, you see how that, right now it's drooping off like that. But if I go like this, it kind of goes through, right through the body. See that? So we don't want that either. I mean, generally, hopefully, you know, you won't have such droopy collisions. I mean, if they're ears or something, they don't really droop that much, and you can sort of leave a little clearance between the body. But if I were to say use collisions on these, right? And if I were to drag the sphere, sphere in there like that, say things are going to go crazy. Okay, so that's not how you would do it, although you would think that that would be a good way to do it. Okay, it's not done like that. Let's see here, hold on a second. Yeah, so it's not, it doesn't like that. So the thing is that the better way to do it, okay, would be to create like a sphere, you know, like this. Oops. To create like a sphere and make it a child, let's say, of the head joint. Okay. And then go to the tools and choose reset transform. This used to be known as reset PSR, by the way, in case you're confused, but now it's reset transform. That pops it to the center. So you can see that it's like right there, right? And then you could use that as the collision object. So that would be a lot better. Now, by the way, what I want to do, just to see how this works a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit more, a little bit less droopy. Okay, so it's more something like this now. Oh, that's not really what we want at all. Well, we could do something like that. Let's see, we'll make this 40. We'll make this about 30. Okay, so we just have some, you know, we don't want to have it like that. It's droopy ears. We just want to have some wobbly antennas like that. And what I want to do is actually, I want to make a null now. So I'll make a null. I'll make it a child of the head and then reset its transform. Okay, and so it's right there where the head is. And then I want to make everything a child of this whole hierarchy. Because on this, what I want to do is I want to add what's called a Vibrate tag, okay, and enable position and rotation on this. Okay, so it's just like rotating a little bit. Maybe we'll make it go a little bit slower. Okay, and we'll just go 100, 100 on the X, Y, and Z, and 60% on the rotation on the X, Y, and Z. So it's just moving around. And you can see how nicely, you know, if that was your animation, you can see how nicely these things animate with the dynamics. Okay, so that's a little bit. That's sort of our first example of IK dynamics. Great for secondary motion. Any questions?
Let me just have a look. So nothing's coming from this, but there was a couple we had left from kind of the previous time I interrupted you.
Okay.
So David was wondering, is there a way to integrate this rig with C-Motion?
Yeah. So basically, that's a really good question, because C-Motion can do a lot of motion, and then you can have the like other parts. So basically, just don't drag these joints into the C-Motion list of joints that you want to control with C-Motion, or you can, you know, you can actually, because you don't have to drag every joint into the C-Motion list. But if you wanted to, what you could do is you could use a null, drag that into C-Motion, and then have the joint chain to be a child of that null. and then have that joint chain be controlled by IK Dynamics. So if you wanted the root of it for whatever reason to be controlled by C motion, you could make it all a child of a null and drag the null into C motion. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does for me. Let's see if we get a reply in the questions area. And in the meantime, we've got a second question, if that's cool, from Rogerio. Why parent the chain to the control and not the head bone itself? Would it be a problem?
Why parent the, say that again?
Why parent the chain to the control and not to the head bone itself? Would it be a problem?
Well, oh, I see. Well, it is the chains. These are the two chains, right? So this is one chain, okay? And this is another chain. And they both are actually parented to the head. Oh, you're talking about in why parent? Read it one more time, just actually.
So it says, why parent the chain to the control and not
Okay,
to
so
the
he's
head
talking
bone
about
itself?
this one over here. Okay. It's because we parented to the control and not to the head bone. And the thing
Okay.
is that the reason is because you can't really see that. You can actually. You can go ahead if you want. You can just change. Go ahead to this. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. You can go ahead and in this instead of the head control, you can put the head bone in there. Okay. You just have to go back to the character object. You know, change this to full hierarchy. You know, then you'd have to display the full hierarchy so you can see the bone. Right? And then, you know, click on the bone. Actually, hold on a second. Let me lock the geo layer. Okay. So I click on the bone. There's the bone is selected, right? Press the S key. So now, no, that the bone is not selected. So you'd have to find the bone, which is somewhere in here. It's easy, actually, just, you know, you just find the bone. There it is. Find the joint. Now, so why isn't it letting me select it? Oh, because this stuff is not on the geo layer. So we'd have to select all of these things, right click it, add to the geo layer. Now lock that layer. Now I can select that joint, which is right here. There it is, selected, right? So now I hit S. There it is, right? But now, unfortunately, we have to actually go back to this thing over here. Let me lock this, okay? And go back to this joint here and drag this in there. And now, instead of the controller, right? And now basically, let me hit play. And now the rotation tool, now it's working just the same, okay? There's actually a little, if you notice, there's a little problem with the, what's the word I'm looking for? The priorities, okay? So what we could do is we could go up to this constraint and we can actually up the priority of this expression to like 70, okay? And then what happens is that, you see, I don't have a priority issue anymore, okay? So the thing is that priorities are something that's kind of a little bit of an advanced thing. Maybe we can talk about that later, but we weren't having that issue with the controller because it was a lower priority. So that might be an argument for why you want to use the controller and not the bone. But you could use either one. If you're more comfortable using the bones as your parents, use the bones. If you're more comfortable using the controller as your parent, use the controller. It's up to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Cool. Yeah, no, those are all the questions so far. So Wesley had one, but he's saying, don't bug Joe with my question. I think he figured out the answer, which is great.
Okay.
And Hannah was just saying, thanks for the fantastic tip to move the antenna IK chains to the head joint. She didn't know that.
Sure. Who said that?
That was Hannah.
Okay. Hey, Hannah. Nice to see you again. All right. So I'm just doing a quick look You know what? Should we model eyelids and mouth, lips closed or open before rigging? Should we model eyelids and mouth closed or open before rigging? Well, lips should be closed, eyes should be open. But okay, so anyway, just thanks for all the nice comments. Appreciate it. And now let's keep going now. So now actually one thing that IK Dynamics is really nice for is it's nice to get kind of like, I'll show, you know, like kind of like an undulating tail, okay? You know, for example, this example right here, we already have the example, but so you can have like sort of like maybe like something underwater, kind of like going like that. Could even go a little bit slower. If you want. So maybe you want to have sort of like an underwater thing, or it could be an octopus tentacle, you know, because you could have like 6 IK chains connected to like a body, and they all can be kind of like undulating, you know, like underwater. I bet that David is going to do that, or that would be nice to see anyway. But anyway, just kidding. You don't have to do it, David. You've already done a lot of really cool stuff, but something to think about. Anyway, but the thing is that, so how would we go about in setting something like this up, right? So the thing is that let's just quickly do it. I'm actually going to breeze through it because, oh my God, where does the time go? But anyway, okay. So let's just go ahead and just do this really quickly. As a matter of fact, we don't really have to spend a lot of time with this because we actually kind of went over all of its things, but we're going to just choose the joint tool, and we're going to go ahead and just make a bunch of joints. Really, I've got snap on, and it's snapping to those points. So we're creating this like huge joint chain made out of all these joints. And there's a joint along the middle of the body. And boy, this is going to take a while to rig, I mean to weight, actually, and I don't want to really spend that time. So why don't we use auto weighting for this, okay? Now, like I said, I already told you pros don't really use auto weighting. What I would do if I was weighting myself is I would weight these joints 50% to the first and second joints. These points, like this is what I would do, okay? Or maybe I should just do it. But you know what? I will auto weight this, okay? So we're going to choose this and all of these joints to here, and we're going to say bind, okay? Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I controlled click those two. So I want to shift click this down. Oops. Shift click this down and then control click that and then hit bind, okay? And it makes a weight tag in a skin object. But now this thing is auto weighted. So if I were to select one of these joints here, you can see that the whole thing is auto weighted. And there's problems with this auto weight. Say, look, this doesn't look right. That doesn't look right. So the thing is that that's why, you know, auto weighting is just really not where it's at. But you know what? We can just quickly go ahead and fix these weights by shift clicking the weight tool, okay, bringing up the weight manager, okay, and going into taking off the subdivision surface, okay, and choosing the first joint, which is this joint. See, look how far the auto weighting went. That's not going to look good. That's what's causing the problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of these points. You have to be in the point mode. Select all of these points and then apply it just to the first joint. Apply selected. Okay, you know what? I want to select all of these joints and I want to zero them out because I just don't like the auto weighting, what it did. So what we'll do is we'll take all of those joints, we'll apply it to the first one, take these joints, apply it to the next two, take these joints, apply it to the second one. Points. I'm saying a lot of times I say points when I really meant joints. I was watching some of the old videos. So you just have to use your own intelligence there to know that sometimes when I say joints, I mean points, and sometimes when I say points, I mean joints. Hopefully you'll be able to figure that out. But you can see how like the ones that are in between the two joints are getting weighted to both joints, and the ones in the middle are just getting weighted to that joint. Right? So it's just a tedious type of work because point weighting is a little tedious. I'm not going to lie. You know, it's just one of those things. It's like a necessary evil sometimes. Sometimes it can be fun. Which one is this? 5 and 6. But a lot of times it's just like repetitive and somewhat boring. So read any good books lately, Ellie?
Do you know, I haven't actually. I've been so busy with all our sessions and April
Right.
launch stuff.
I
Yeah.
understand. I guess I'm saying that, like, you know, it's like you know what you could do if you have a long job like this, you can just put some good music on and
That's
just
something I
zone
do.
out to the music,
Yeah. I
right?
love to stick a good playlist on when I'm doing
On
something
Spotify.
inside a cinema. Yeah, I love a bit of Spotify.
Yeah. Like, what do you listen to? New stuff, old stuff,
Do you know,
mixed?
it's a bit of a mix. Well, I wouldn't refer to it as old though. If I did, I think anyone older than me would probably
So you don't
roll
listen to like
over.
the classic old school like Motown or anything like that.
No, nothing
So
of
like
that
electronic
decade.
chill music.
Yeah, so do you know what? I like a bit of like acoustic music.
Okay,
If I'm just kind of like chilling.
right.
But yeah, I do. I love a bit of house as well. But that's more when I'm
So on the
about to go
last
out.
points, I'm just going to weight all of them to join 11. Okay, so then you basically understand that the ones in between get weighted 50-50 to these two joints, and the ones in the middle get weighted 100 to each joint. So now this thing is weighted. Okay, so now we can pop back into this thing. It's nicely weighted. What we're going to do is there is a root null in the beginning. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to click on a little IK tag here. Okay, and we're going to, in the IK tag, we're going to say dynamics. We're going to go to the dynamics. We're going to enable the dynamics. Okay, and then what we're going to do, it's actually really nothing new here. It's just another example of when you would do. And then we're going to go ahead. We're going to put another vibrate tag onto the first one. Okay, and this time we're going to say a regular pulse. So it's kind of like just regularly pulsing. And we'll just whatever. I'm not really sure how much to make all these things, but I'll make it like 60, 60, 60. And then the frequency I'll just put to 1 on this. And then if we just play it, let's just keep our fingers crossed and it's not working. Okay, why? Let's see why it's not working. Let's go back to the IK. Dynamics enabled. Oh, because probably we never told it what the end joint was. So we have to drag this one into the end joint. Okay, and now hopefully if we do it now, okay, now it doesn't look very good. And why is that? The reason it doesn't look very good is because we should make, on the dynamics, we should make the gravity 0. And we also want, what we want to do, looks like it's rotated weirdly. Let me bring this back. Okay, so I don't want to rotate it in every direction, okay? So in the Vibrate tag, we're just going to rotate it in one direction. I think it's the first one. Okay, so there we have something that's better. We can maybe rotate it in another direction. Let's try this one too. Well, we'll make it like 10 degrees in that rotation. And maybe 10 degrees, so let me just see about 30 degrees of that. Well, whatever, maybe 10 degrees. So anyway, that'll be our motion. The other thing what I want to do is, since it's kind of underwater on the Ik tag, we want to up the drag to about like 20%. This is really, or maybe even 50%. Okay, that'll make it look like it's really sort of like in water. Okay, something like that, you know, and if it's going too fast, we can just lower the frequency to about 0.5, you know, and then it's kind of just like in the water doing its thing. Okay, so that's how you can make an undulating tail. Very cool, you know, thing if you're doing fish, or if you're doing a dragon or an eel or some kind of a, you know, underwater, an octopus, an underwater creature. Okay. So if there's no questions about that, I did want to mention quickly, boy, running out of time quickly here. I did want to mention quickly about what something else it's called Spline Ik. Okay. And Spline Ik is actually a useful tool here. Okay. Let's say, for example, you have this. It kind of looks like this one, but actually this one was like kind of a fish, and the other one is kind of a worm. Okay, so what is Spline Ik? Well, once again, what I'll do is I'll take my joint tool, okay, and I'll just I'll put snapping on, okay, and we'll snap it to the points, and we'll go ahead and we'll snap it at each one of these points quickly. Oh, actually, you know what? We already did all this work on this one, so let's just quickly go back to the beginning, okay, and take off this Vibrate tag, take off the Ik tag, and it's all weighted, okay? So it's all weighted and it's all ready to go. So what is Spline Ik? All right, so basically let's go to a side view. So you can see that all of these, this whole joint chain, this whole thing that we've got here is all weighted. See? So with Spline Ik, what we can do is we can choose the spline tool, okay? And we can make a spline, right? So what I'll do is I want to get, I don't want to wait to points. So I want to wait to, if I click this a few times, the snapping, I want to enable snap, and I want to the axes, because I want to snap to the axis of the joints. Okay, so what we'll do is we will take the spline tool, okay, and I will snap to that first one, okay. I'll go 3, is it 3 or 4? With like 3 later, okay, and I'll snap to this one, okay, and then I'll go 3 later, I'll snap to this one. Oops, I missed. Okay, and then I'll go 3 later and I'll snap to this one. It seems like it's not really snapping there, doesn't it? Well, okay, I'll just, actually, if I hold down the mouse button. Why is it not snapping? Okay, it doesn't matter. All right, and then I'll go to the last one and I'll just snap it to the last one. Okay, now, what we'll do is we're going to go ahead. So we basically have like a spline and we have the joints, and the spline looks like this. Hang on one second.
Hello, please leave a message after the tone.
Hang on.
Hello.
Okay. So we have this spline over here, okay? And we're going to go ahead and we're going to, that's what the spline looks like. It's just a spline, okay? See if I move this up. Hang on a second, let me take care of this call. Hey, Jocelyn, I'm in the middle of teaching, okay?
Oh, okay, she can't talk?
I think she's asleep. Bye.
Okay, bye.
All right, so sorry about that. So it's a spline and it's a cubic spline, okay? So it doesn't have tangents, the curve is made automatically, okay? So what I want to do is I want to use this spline to control the bones, okay? And the way you do that is what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and we are going to click on the first joint here in the chain, and we're going to give it a new tag. We're going to give it what's called an IK spline. It's under the IK tag. See this? IK spline. Okay, now, what is the IK spline? What it allows you to do is, first of all, in the IK spline, in the tag thing, it wants the end of the spline. Okay, so, well, actually, first what it wants is the spline. So we're going to tell it, use this spline. Let me just make sure that this spline is in the center. And it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the spline, we're going to go to the tag here of the IK spline tag. We're going to drag in that spline. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to drag in the last joint in the spline, which is joint 12. And now it's set up. Okay, so now if I go to the spline, right, I can go to the spline, and somewhere in here on the spline, okay, it's hard to see, but I got the spline selected, and I'm going to select the selection tool, and I'm going to select like a thing in the spline, one of the points of the spline, and you notice that the whole thing, that whole joint chain is being controlled by the spline. See that? Useful stuff there. Now, the thing is that there's some options here though, because in the IK spline, you could say fit. Fit basically means that if I change the spline, this thing retains its size, okay? But there's another one useful here. It's called equal, okay? And there's another one too, which basically kind of stretches the geometry and the bones out to the size of the spline, see? Which is kind of cool because I want this to be a little bit wormy looking, like if it's a worm, okay? So I want them to like contract a little bit, you know, like the way that a centipede would or something. So I don't want it on fit, but you might want it on fit. I just don't. The other thing that I want to do is if I go to like a side mode, okay, what I want is that in the IK spline tag, there's something called handles. Because you can't really see where your spline is right now. You're like, how do I control this? What's going on, right? So what I'm going to do is I know that I have on the spline, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on the spline. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, even though it says 0 through 4, it's, you know, 5 of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a little triangle. I mean, not triangle, rectangle here. And I'm going to make it smaller. It looks like a square, actually. I'm just going to take that. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I still have snapping onto axes on. So I'm going to, you know, snap it to this axis right here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it editable by pressing the C key. Okay, now it's editable. And now I'm going to select all those points and I'm going to move it up kind of right around here. So if I go back to the model mode, you know, the points are up here, but its pivot is down here. Okay. And then I'm going to hold down the control key and I'm going to move that to over here. Okay. And then I'm going to take it and move it to over here. And then I'm going to move it and copy it and move that one to over here, right? And then I'm not going to bother renaming them right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag these handles in here, into these different handles. One. Okay, and then what happened actually? So, you know what's happening is that I think I drew my spline from here to here. I needed to draw my spline from here to here. Okay, because if you look, if I drag this in over here, like something is weird's happening. So I need to go to my spline, and under the spline tools, under that was a mistake that I made, but that's a little learning opportunity here. There's something here called point order. If I reverse the sequence of that spline, no, actually that's not working. So what is going on? Actually, that's not the reason why it's happening. Oh, I see. I know why. Okay. Because I didn't make one for the first one. That wasn't. So the spline, I did make the spline from right to left. But if you ever have a reversal and you don't know what's happening, it's because you need to reverse the spline. What I needed to do is I need to take this one over here and I need to copy it and make a first one here. Okay, so this is going to be 0. Okay, and then this is going to be 001. I mean 01. This is going to be 02. You don't have to rename them if you don't want to. It's going to be 03. This is going to be 04. Okay. So now what happens is that if I go over here to this, now let's see, if I go to 00, okay, now it's working. So that's 00 should be in there. And then 01 should be in here. And then 02 should be in here. 03 should be in here. And 04 should be in here, right? So now what I can do is rather than hunt for the points of the spline, I can just select, you know, the controllers. Okay, so for example, I can move the controllers, I mean, to the side, okay, or wherever. Or like, for example, and I can control this snake with the controllers, and, or for example, like let's say I were to take all these controllers and I were to keyframe them, and I go ahead, you know, a certain amount of frames later, and let's say I were to, you know, take these two and move them up for me forward. And this one I'll move forward too. Oops. Oops, sorry, actually. You know what? First I want to take this one and move it up to here. And this one I want to move forward a little bit. And maybe move this one back, right? And then I want to take all these keyframes again and keyframe them, right? And then I want to go ahead another bunch of keyframes and then take this one forward to here, let's say. And this one to here, and then this one back down to here. And then this one to here. And then take all of these and do it again. Keyframe those. Right, so now what happens is that now I have kind of like an inchworm. You know, I could animate sort of like an inchworm. So that'll be really difficult to do without IK Spline. Okay, so it's a very useful tool, especially if you want these kind of bendy characters. You could rig them with IK splines, and you could get like a really nice curvy type of look to them. If you tried to rig it without IK spline, it'd be a lot more work, especially if you want them to like expand a little bit and stretch a little bit and contract like that. So, any questions?
So we've got a couple of questions. So I got one from Hannah saying, is there a possibility to add a collision object to the Spline Ik tag?
Collision object. Not really, no. There's that, it doesn't have that. Let me just see something here. No, it doesn't have a dynamics thing. If you want to get spline with collisions and dynamics and stuff, then we talked about a little bit about spline dynamics, which is another tool and it's another thing, but not for Spline Ik. There's no way to get a collision object, no. But it's a good question, Hannah. Thank you.
Cool. And Rod was wondering, can you use the Formula Effector or C motion on the rectangles?
Yes, you can. You can stick these into C motion. Absolutely, that's a great idea too. You can get an inchworm, a cyclical inchworm motion along a path or something with C motion and drag in the controllers into C motion. Yes.
Cool. Yeah, so those were I believe those are the only two questions that we've had in. And remind me at the end, we've had a really great question from Denitris. But it's a little bit off topic, but it's a great question. So I want to remember
maybe at the end or something.
to do it at the end.
Okay. All right. Now, let's move on. Let's move on to something really interesting, actually. It's called, let's go back to this thing. Let me revert this project. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about something called the Pose library. Now, the Pose library is a huge topic. It's something that, like, for example, might fit under an animation class, but animation is so tied. Oh, let me just stop that thing from beeping, actually.
To delete all old messages, press delete. Messages deleted.
I guess you heard that, but that's fine. So anyway, the thing is that animation and rigging are obviously so closely intertwined that it's sort of one thing. Okay. So, oh, it's still doing that. That's odd.
No messages. No messages.
Okay.
The machine is off.
Anyway, so the thing is that so what is it actually? So what is actually the Pose library? So the Pose library allows you to save like a set of transformations of joints for easy recall later. So that sounds easy enough, but what's really nice about it is that you can mix poses together. So you can have 50% of one pose and 60% and 50% of another pose, or 33 and 66, or 25 and 75, or whatever. And what happens is that it just makes the process a whole heck of a lot easier when you're animating. So for example, first what I want to do is I want to take my my arm, or this arm anyway, okay? I'm going to take this arm here and I'm going to make it an FK arm because, like I said in the last class, arms are usually FK. Okay, so unless they need to be IK, and then they're IK. Okay, but when they're, I shouldn't say are usually FK. That's not true. What I should say, our arms are FK when they move freely, but when they have to be stuck on something, then they're IK. Okay, so the thing is that that's a better way of saying it. So the thing is that what I want to do first of all is I want to select all of these controllers for the hand, because what I want to do is I want to make my first pose. Now here's how you get to the pose library, by the way. You go to the character menu, you go under manager, you go to pose library browser. Okay, and then there's one in here already. I kind of, you know what, maybe I'll leave that in there. Okay, because what I want to do is I want to make a new pose library. So I bring up my pose library, but when you bring it up, the first thing you're going to see is you're going to see something called preferences. Okay, so if you click on preferences, you have this little button right here. It's called a new library. You click on that and you get a new pose library. Okay, I already have one called Charlie in there, but I want to make a new one so you see how it's done. And we're going to call this, you know, we'll call it Charles. Okay, it's Charles and Charlie. Maybe I'll call it something totally different. So we'll give this guy a name. Ellie, would you like to name this guy?
Oh, shall I name this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, I would call him Joe because you made him.
Well, let's call him Jose.
Jose, I like that. I like that.
All
That's
right.
good.
So this guy's named Jose, and basically what I'm going to do, I've just made a new pose library. Congratulations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new, not this one, not new library, but I'm going to make a new group. This is a new group of poses underneath the Jose pose library. And I'm going to call this group, I'm going to call it hands. Okay, so now I made a new group under the pose library, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hands, and now I'm finally going to make a new pose. Now, before I actually make a new pose, okay, what I want to do is I want to pose this hand to be like a pointing hand. Okay, I want this hand to be like a pointing hand. And so in order to do that, I'm going to take, let's say, this controller, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take it and curl that finger like that. And then I'm going to take the next one over here and I'm going to, you know, make that kind of point a little bit more like that. Actually, why don't I bring it way up so it kind of like, you know, not so far, but points to like right around here. Actually, hold on a second. Right around here. Okay, and then for the next one, we're going to go ahead to this one, and we are going to take this and rotate this to about right here. Okay, so and then we've got that. Now we have a little bit, because there's not a lot of geometry on this hand actually. It's a little, it's, you know, a little bit. So maybe I'll make it come out a little bit more actually, and this one too. And I'll handle the rest of the rotation with the other joints. So we'll bring that. So the first one isn't really rotating that much, and the second one gets rotated a little bit like to here. Okay, and same with this one too. This one will get rotated a little bit like that. So that's fine. I mean, I could spend an hour on that. I don't really need to. Maybe I'll do it like a little bit on this one, just a little bit. Okay, if I had more geometry, then this deformation wouldn't be so severe over here, but that's fine. Okay, now for this one, okay, we'll rotate this sort of in, the thumb in a little bit, maybe a little bit more. Okay, and then on this one over here, we'll drag this down a little bit. So it's kind of like if he's pointing, a little bit less on the curl, let's say. Okay, so that'll be our position, right? And that'll be our point. Maybe we won't really rotate. We'll make this back kind of straight. Okay, so that's going to be our pointing position. So what we're going to do is I want to save this as a pose, because next time I want him to make him point, I don't want to have to go through all that all over again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead, and now here's the thing. Before you make a pose, you can't just do this and make a new pose like this, like that, because there's nothing that was saved in this pose. What you have to do, and by the way, okay, what you have to do, so let me delete that pose. Jose hands, right? So what you have to do is you have to select all the controllers in your pose, or bones. They can be bones or controllers. And you want to select all the bones and or controllers in your pose that you want to be in that pose. So which ones do I want to be in that pose? Well, okay, I want all of these, okay, as well as these. So basically pretty much all the controllers of the hand, okay? And now let me just tell you something. Let's say you want to pose this again later, and you don't want to go through this nitpicking process of selecting all these controllers, okay? Because let's say some of them were hard to find. It only took me a few seconds, but let's say you just didn't want to have to do that. You can make in Cinema 4D what's called a selection object. Okay, so with these controllers selecting, if I create a selection object, see, I've just created a selection object. Okay, and I'm going to call it right hand controllers. See that? And I'm going to make actually a null, and I'm going to call this selection objects. And I'm going to put this selection object into that null. Okay, now look at the selection object here. See, it has all these controllers into it, except, you know, it has this geo, that shouldn't be there. So I'm going to get rid of it, okay? And it also has something else in there that shouldn't be in there. The hand geometry, that shouldn't be in there. So I'm going to get rid of that too, okay? And then what happens is that now nothing is controlled. Now later on, if I want to control all those controllers again, all I have to do is right click right here on the control selection object, okay? And all those controllers are selected. Okay, so it's really kind of like, you know, on really nice rigs that are made, you'll have a whole bunch of these controllers selection objects for different areas of the body or for the full, and especially comes in useful in facial rigging too. Okay, so we'll try to save a second just at the end just to talk about that a little bit, but the thing is that, so now I have all these control selection. Now if I make the pose, see, I make a pose. Now you'll notice that oh darn it, I wanted to make a pose at first in its default pose. And I forgot to do that, but anyway, who cares? Doesn't matter. All right, anyway. I should have made a default pose first, but I didn't. So anyway, so the thing is that now I've got this pose, and like the thing is I want to take a picture of this pose to remind me what this pose is. Okay, so we'll get a nice angle of it, maybe like this, and we'll take a picture of it. See that? Maybe we'll get it like this. or whatever. Okay, so we got a picture of this pointing hand. Okay, I liked it better like this. So there it is. There's our pointy hand, but I don't like him in the picture. There we go. So now let's make another pose. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and if I had made a default pose, I would go back to the default pose first, but I didn't. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to move this up a little bit like that. And then we'll take this one, and darn, I really wish I made that default pose, but okay, we'll bring that like that. I don't even know if these were set to like freeze transformations. Oh, maybe they were. Okay, it looks like they were. So let's actually select all of these controllers and let's reset the transform and hope that they were freeze transformations on everything. And there were. Okay, so that's good. That's the useful part of having freeze transformations. So now actually let's make a new pose. Okay, by the way, we should have named this first pose. We need to name it point. Okay, or R point. Okay, so now what we want to do is now with everything in its default position, we're going to make a new pose. And we're going to call this default, or default. So now I have two poses in there, and let's take a picture of this too. Okay, so now what's happening is that, so we've got two poses in here. There's our point, which is like that, okay? And then there's our default, okay? So now we have 2 points. Now, if you want to change a point pose, by the way, let's say, for example, you wanted, you know, you wanted this finger to point up a little bit. I click it, right? And then I just point that up a little bit like that, let's say, okay? And what with it still selected under our point, I can say add overwrite selected object to pose, okay? So now what happens is that I overwrote the pose. So here's the default pose, here's the point pose. See, kind of like it looks, you know, a little bit weird, but whatever, okay? Add overwrite. So you can, once you make a pose, you can always change it. So that's how you would do that. Now, let's, for example, what we can do is let's make a third pose, right? So for the third, I'm going to go back to my default, okay, pose, right? And now what it is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a fist. So I'll drag that. I'll take all three of these. Oops. I'll take all three of these joints, right? And what we'll do is we will make like a fist. Okay, and then we'll take the thumb and we'll rotate that a little bit. Okay, and then we'll bring it down. So it's kind of under, you know, and we'll bring it out a little bit. Okay, I'm not going to spend a year and a day to do this, but we'll do that. Okay, so now it's kind of like a fist right there, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the selection object, and I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to say make a new pose. So we're going to go down here and make a new pose. Okay, we're going to take a picture of it. Okay, and then what we have is and we're going to call it our fist. Okay, so when we have so we got the default, okay? We have the point, okay? And then we have the fist, okay? So now what happens is that now we can make another group. So you can have as many of these as you want. You could have 20 in here, 20 different, you know, hand positions, okay? Like an okay or a thumbs up or, you know, a pinky in the air or whatever, okay? You can have as many of them as you want in there. Then when you're ready, you can go back to this over here. And you can make a new group. And in your other group, you could say like body poses. Right? Now, so I was going to go through this whole thing, but it's already actually saved because we're just not going to really have that much time. But so the thing is that let me open that project. Oh, actually, I don't have to really open that project because it's a shared pose library here. Okay, so let me go back to the default. Let's hope this is going to work. Otherwise, I will open up the other thing. And we'll go back to the Charlie library I made before. So, oh no, we have to actually go back. We have to open up the other project. Okay, so you can see in this one, so I have those same hands that we did, right? So let me go back, but I made some body poses here. So one that I made is the default pose. Okay, that's the default pose, right? But one thing that you'll notice here is that I made another selection object. I made this one we just made, which is all of the hand controls for the right hand, okay? But I made another selection object. It's called all controllers. If I double click that one, every single control except for these ones on the edge and these ones in the back of the foot, because you don't need them. All of them are actually in that selection object. So if I want to make a full body pose, okay, they need to be selected. So that's why there's a all controllers selection object, okay? And then what happens is that, so I have like, for example, I made this pose, which is kind of like if he's like, see, so there's a lot going on actually in this pose. It could be a little deceiving, but you can see what happens is that he shifts his weight onto one. His hand also, by the way, this hand goes into a fist, which I use the fist pose to do, okay? And his weight gets shifted onto one leg. His pelvis is rotated slightly. So this is actually shifted to the left. His pelvis is rotated. His spine kind of goes back. His head is turned a little bit, okay? His head is turned a little bit, and his head is, and he's also looking up slightly. And then the arms are actually, you know, done so that way he's putting his fist on his thing. But thing is that on the hand, I can go back to the hand here and I can actually make it back to the default pose here, okay, if I want to, okay. So the thing is that it's a pose that I saved. So if I ever want him to resume this pose, because it took me, you know, about 5 minutes to make this pose, you know, if I ever wanted to resume this pose, I could just go back to the, you know, I could just go over here and I can just choose that pose and he's in that pose. I don't have to worry about it. There's another one here, it's called crouch, which is I made it like this. He crouches down like that. And then you'll notice that for the hand in this one, to get the position I wanted, okay, I just went like 30% of the fist, and I got that. So, which brings us to another topic, is that if I click this button here, what happens is that I get what's called the thumbnail view. Now, this is really useful. It's actually very, very useful because, first of all, you can see all of your poses as opposed to in this view. Okay, you can see all your poses, and you have sliders for each one of your poses. And you see how like you have like body poses and hand poses. Okay, so here's the hand poses, and if you click over here, you have your body poses. So we have a T pose. Oh, we never took one for the crouch, so no problem. Here's the crouch. You know, we'll just take one for the crouch. There you go. It's a little off center. Okay, so what you can have, because we are actually running out of time, but what you can have is you can have hand poses, body poses, head poses, whatever. And of course, you can have facial expressions. Now, we're not going to really get into facial at all really here. It's another topic of discussion. There are two approaches to facial animation. One is by using pose morphs. We talked a little bit about pose morphs when we talked about that arm, okay, with the muscle. Hopefully you guys have seen that. Oops. But the when we talked about the I think it was class 3. This. Okay, we talked about using pose morphs to create this bulge. So what we can do is we could use pose morphs. Like I'll quickly just create one just so you can see it, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, by the way, you see I wanted to up a pose, but it's not working. Okay, why isn't it working? Because I have to select the controllers. Then the pose works, these sliders work. And what's nice is you could mix them. So I could have half of this, let's say half of this, and half of this. You can mix poses, okay? That's really why it's so powerful, because you can mix the poses. This pose right here is a mix of two poses. And this becomes really useful when you're going to actually go ahead and do facial rigging. Now, what I was going to say is that let's just talk just really quickly about pose morphs very fast, okay? Because let's say, for example, you wanted to create, let's say something simple. You wanted to create a blink, okay? So we're going to go ahead. We're going to unlock, first of all, the geo layer. We're going to go to the head, okay? We're going to go to the point mode, okay? We're going to go sort of like to a 3/4 view. And what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the head, and we're going to give it a rigging tag. We're going to give it what's called a pose morph, okay? So there we have the pose morphs. As soon as you make a pose morph, it asks you what kind of pose morph do you want? We want to have it on the points of the mesh. So we click points. First thing that it does is it makes a base pose. Base pose is like the default pose, and it's the pose that it's in right now. But now it made a new pose here. It's called pose 0. So we're going to call that blink, right? And then what we're going to do is right now we're in the edit mode of this pose. We're not in the animate mode, we're in the edit mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to select these 2 points on the bottom of the eye, right? We're going to kind of go to a side view just so we can see it a little bit better. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this thing and we're going to move it down to about right here. I'll go to another view, maybe bring it out or maybe we bring it in a little bit, right to around there, okay? So that'll be like my blink pose, right? So now, the thing is that if I go back to the pose morph thing, first of all, I can preview it here. So like, for example, if you want to make him look sleepy, he can look a little bit sleepy like this. You don't have to make it go down all the way, okay? But this is not a pose library, by the way, because pose library, these poses are for joints, okay? This is a pose morph. This is more akin to what's known in other software packages, but it works better here actually, as what are called blend shapes or shape keys or whatever. So the thing is that, so now if I go to the pose morph, I can actually go ahead, and if you go to the animate mode, now I can set keyframes for this, okay? So I can like set a keyframe for it like that, and then I can go, you know, three frames later and set a keyframe for it closed. Keyframe that, go 3 frames later, and then open it again. Okay, so now what happens is I've just created animation, but it's not working. So why isn't it not working? Oh, right, because that'll always mess you up. Okay, what it is that it's not that little button there. It's actually this button. So we go to we go to frame 0. We click this button right here. We go 3 frames later, or 4 frames, yeah, 3 frames later is fine. We'll go close this, we'll click this again. We'll go 3 frames later, we'll open it, okay? And now, we don't need this. If I scrub through it, now he's blinking, okay? So now, the thing is that I'll quickly bring this up because actually, I have a file here, which I started making a few different poses. Okay, so first of all, the default pose, you notice he's not smiling because really the rest pose, you don't want an expression in there. So he's not smiling anymore. But if I go down to, so don't be sad because he's still happy. It's just that I made a pose for him to smile. See, I made a few smiles here, okay? So I made a few pose morphs here. So I already made the blink like we just did in the other file, or sleepy eyes, or if you want him to look down or whatever, you have to move the eye too. Okay, but there's another one here, it's called smile. Okay, so he's got smile. You can make one for the smile. Okay, or another one you could make is you could make for the A. Now you'll notice I have a driver on this one because actually the A pose morph is actually driving the rotation of the jaw a little bit because it's a mixture. It's an A and driving the rotation of the jaw. Okay, and then I've got another one here. It's like O. Okay, so he's got an O, right? But the thing is that, and here's the nice thing about it. If you wanted to have an A, but you wanted to like him to smile a little bit while he was making the A, you can mix them. See that? Or if you wanted to have the O, if you wanted to have like half of an A, right, and then half of an O, you could mix them, right? Which is actually really, really, really useful. I can't stress how useful that is. Then you could mix a little bit of a sleepiness in them. Or, you know, you could take the A out And that now you put some sleepy eyes on him, and like now it looks like he's yawning or something. Well, not quite, but maybe if I did both of these, that could maybe look like he's yawning. So I never went to the F though, because the F, you got to get a little teeth action in the F. So now this is how you would end up doing facial animation. You would make expressions for growling. You'd make expressions for the eyebrows. You'd make expressions for the nose. You'd make expressions like if you want them to, like, for example, you know, if you would want to make them, for example, to like sneer a little bit or something. You know, I'm going to make them sneer. Ugh. Okay. So the thing is that there's a lot of different things you can do. Okay. So we touched on this. The thing we're not going to touch in is the other way you do facial animation. And you can mix the two. And the other way to do facial animation is, rather than doing it with this pose morph way, you create a rig with joints for the face. And that is a whole nother topic, but you would create a whole rigged facial rig for the face. And you could mix in some pose morphs to that. Okay, you can actually mix them together. But now, what are the benefits of each? They both have benefits. Pose morph is great. It's easy to do. Okay, it's a great way to get facial animation. Okay, but here's some problems with pose morphs. It's also fast. I mean, the viewport is very fast. Here's the problem with things. If you change your model, if you add geometry, it messes it up. Okay, whereas facial rigs don't. Okay, and also with the facial rigs is like, if you have just pose morphs, right? And you have like this A, whatever. Let's say you wanted to like curve up one lip a little bit. So you have this mixed with sort of like a lip, you know, kind of like up a little bit. You could do that with a facial rig. You can't really do that. Well, you could, but you know, it's different. So each way has its benefits. The way that I started is I started with pose morphs, but now I'm doing facial rigging. Okay, because there's benefits. But still, I would, if I had to do something with pose morphs, I wouldn't be sad about it. I would just do it with pose morphs because I like that way too. So they're both, but pose morphs are also very useful for like the bulging the muscles and stuff, which we did in the third one. So the basic thing that I'm trying to tell you is there are two valid ways. You could go with one way or the other, or you could mix the two. Okay, but it's a whole long story about how to create a nice facial rig that we just don't have time to do it. But that's about it. Are there any questions?
Cool, that was amazing stuff. So we've had some really nice comments. We've had a few questions about the pose library in particular, but I didn't want to kind of interrupt the flow.
Sure.
So let me find. So Wesley was wondering, can XPresso drivers be stored in the pose library?
No, but the XPresso, the controllers and the bones can, but the bones and the controllers can have XPresso tags attached to them, and they will work. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can't store an XPresso tag in it, but the controller that you're storing in the pose library can have an XPresso tag on it.
Ah, perfect, cool. Just having a quick look through. So can the poses in the pose library be keyframed or animated?
Well, that's the whole idea. You put the pose in, and you have, and while those joints are still selected, you set a key. Okay. Otherwise, you're not going to, the pose, otherwise you're going to lose the pose. You have to key the pose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Got a quick one here from Hannah saying, would you use tip joints directly under the mesh for rigging facial animations?
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, that is a way. Yes, yes. The answer is yes. That tip joint, like tips and things like that, or even joints that don't have any bones to them, are all part of facial rigging. So yes,
Cool.
that's a good insight. Once again, Hannah.
Cool. We've got some lovely comments here. One from Bern saying the audience is overwhelmed. Standing ovation for Joe.
Thank you,
And from
Bern. Thank you so much, because I noticed that you've come to every course, and I want to thank you.
Got another lovely one.
And thank
from
you for
Jim.
sending that funny animation of that you did in an electric image. I was really fun to see, actually, especially because I used to do a lot of printing. So
A lot of people are saying it's really valuable stuff, and a lot of thank yous. So I wanted to come back to that question from Drake. Let me just find it again. Okay, cool. So it's off topic, but I think it's a really interesting question, and like we'd love to know your insight on this. So Drake says, do you have any favorite or go-to use cases for using rigging to solve MoGraph goals, like with particles or art directing dynamics kind of effects? Any that you've hacked and now rely
sure.
upon?
There's all kinds of things you can do. Depending on what the situation is. You can create, and also there's cloth, combining rigging with cloth, because you can have, cloth, or of course hair. Hair is a particle system in a way. Hair is a big part of rigging, but the thing is that, that's a whole nother can of beans. But sure, MoGraph, yeah, it depends. It would all depend on the case scenario, but sure.
Cool, yeah. I'm just having a little look through, see if there's any that we've missed. So this was sort of back with the IK dynamic system. Eduardo was wondering if it's a good idea to auto animate an arm with IK dynamics for a walk cycle.
You can. Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so some people actually like to to animate with IK even if the hand is free. Okay, you can. It's kind of like arm animation is done in FK. In general. Generally speaking, if the hand is free. Okay, but if you wanted to attach the hand to like a door or something, or something else like that, then you switch it over to IK. But you can actually animate an arm with IK. I think in some cases, actually, it's a little easier. Like, for example, like I think it could be easier if he's wiping a table. Okay. Like if he's wiping a table with a cloth or something, I think it could be a lot easier to do it with the hand, with the IK. But then again, you probably want to attach the hand to the cloth and then animate the cloth. Does that make sense?
Yep, does for me.
So, but you can just go ahead. You don't even have to ever switch to FK. But I'll tell you one thing. For C motion, it's hard to use IK for the hands, and you shouldn't.
Cool. So sorry, I'm just having a quick look to see if there are any others. So there's another one here from Drake saying about a specific example titled Scrat, because it's in a cartoony way with exaggerated
Scrat,
features.
I know exactly what it's talking about. Hold on. So
yeah,
what is the question?
So it's about 15 up. Okay, so just below, thanks for showing the smile.
What's the name?
It's Drake, but in here in the chat it comes up as Denitris.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any? Oh no. Okay. Hold on. Let's
So
see.
it's appreciate Silly. I asked specifically for the scrat is like the title of it.
Yeah. I think I just. Right. Okay. Wait. Okay, I asked specific for the Scrat example because he's a cartoon and has very exaggerated features. I really can't my head wrap around that. How could the eyelid slide all the way up on the eyeball? Right. It's possible to change the pivot point of many points, or isn't it, and have them make an arc with a one-way pose morph? I know. Wait, I lost that. Hold on. I know I asked much. He doesn't actually have to demonstrate. Just so the thing is that part of facial rigging there's something called fleshy eyes, because when you move your eyeballs, actually the eyelids move. Like if you look up, the eyelids go up, and if you look down, your eyelids go down. Okay, and there's a technique to weighting that. It's called fleshy eyes. Okay, and I'm not sure if that's exactly your question, but all those kinds of things, you know, you can do some of it with Pose Morph. You can actually do some of it with Pose Morph. And there's actually even a way to move points in an arc fashion with a Pose Morph. But really, when what you're talking really has to do more with facial rigging. And you know, we just couldn't really do that in this course. But it's fleshy eyes and being able to create a certain kind of rig for the eyes. Does that make sense?
I think so. We have got a thank you in the chat from him, so possibly. Okay. And so Wesley's asked again, so this was relating to the XPresso stuff. He's wondering and saying it's quite important to know if user data values driving animations through XPresso can be put in the Pose library. So we sort of got a bit deeper into his question, his original question.
I mean, so, I mean, like none of that can be put in the only thing that can be put in the Pose library are joints and controllers, things that have transforms on them. Okay. Now you can have user data and use that. You could set the pose and then go into user data and then do it. Actually, the thing is that if you actually, to be honest with you, the user data is going to take over the transforms of the joints. Okay, so you probably won't be able to pose those joints if you try to do it. So, I mean, so the answer is that it's kind of like you can, if the joint is being controlled through user data, it's not going to, you're not going to be able to pose it. You can only pose it with the slider.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that. Okay, yeah, perfect. He's saying that's what we saw. Perfect answer. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Good question, though. Very good question.
Yeah.
And I'm reading the comments. Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for the nice comments. You know, thank you, Hannah. Thank you, you know, Wesley. Thank you, everybody. Really, I'm reading. Enno, thank you so much for that nice comment you wrote. Anders, Burned, of course. Jim, thank you very much. Thanks. Hope all you guys follow my channel on YouTube and say hi on Twitter and stuff. Follow me on Twitter. Oh, and here's Kent. Thank you, Kent. And Eduardo, Neil, and everybody. Thanks so much, Sharon.
Yeah, there's been some great questions. So let me just, I'm just going to steal the screen back just to do some final little bits, just to tell everyone.
Let me get back on as well. Yeah.
Before they head off, and let me just show my screen, and let me come back on camera as well.
Okay, let me put the
Amazing
camera on.
stuff as always, Joe. I just wanted to sort of do like a final thank you to you for putting all of this amazing stuff together. And as you can see in the questions, everyone really appreciates it, and it's been like a real pleasure being on this workshop with you.
It's been wonderful to do it with you, Ellie. I want to thank you so much for being here and
no,
sort of
I've just
supporting.
just sort of been here observing in awe, really.
No, but you've been
No,
keeping an eye on the questions, and also thank you so much helping me to get started.
Yeah, no,
And I want to thank Simon, of course, Simon Walker. He's a great steward of this whole training team and everything. Thank you so much, and thanks to Dr. Sassy for doing the cataloging and everybody else on the Maxon training team. I want to also thank everybody for coming and asking questions and participating and watching on YouTube and everything. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, definitely. And so I wanted to just sort of remind everyone that all of these sessions are recorded and they do get put on the Maxon training team YouTube channel. And everything is kind of segregated into its own playlist as well. And so this particular series is a hands-on with Maxon workshop. And so if you come over to the Maxon training team, this is like the main channel. And if you just scroll down, everything is in the individual series, whether it's Ask the Trainer or Demystifying Post-Production, and then you can just click the playlist and we have all of the different things in here. And I'm going to try and find a way of separating these into their individual like workshops as well, so that hopefully will be coming as well.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, so what we'll do, we'll make sure part 6 is on there either later today or in the morning, depending on time. And also, for anyone who doesn't know, if you want to catch up on any of the events that are happening or any kind of future sessions or workshops that are happening, you can head over to the events page and they're all listed on there, all the great stuff that we can see. And I just wanted to drop some further learning information before we kind of say goodbye. And it's basically what we've just sort of talked about. So you can catch up on these sessions and all the other sessions on the training team YouTube channel. And for anyone who doesn't know, NAB 2022 is starting as of Sunday. And so we'll basically Maxon's there, we've got a bunch of artists, a bunch of us trainers are going to be there, and we're going to be running live sessions basically for 4 days straight from Sunday to Wednesday. So if you happen to be near Vegas, come say hey, come hang out with us. But if not, they're going to all be streamed on the 3D Motion Show, which is the main Maxon VFX YouTube channel. But what we'll do, we'll also take the ones from the Maxon trainers and we'll shove those on the training team as well. And then we've got a list of all the other sessions that are going on: Demystifying Post-Production, which happens on Mondays, Ask the Trainer and Maxon Color, which are alternate Thursdays. And I also dropped your YouTube channel there, Joe, because you were saying you're going to be doing a bit more on there. So I thought I'd
come on, follow me, and I might do supplemental stuff to like these deep dives, you know, like just supplemental like tests and animation examples and trying out different things, and you know, so come on over and join
absolutely.
the fun.
And one final quick thing I just wanted to mention for those of you that are still here, thank you so much. You know we love to overrun these things. It's such great content that we're never going to end these early, but there is, as soon as this session ends, there's actually a sort of like a feedback questionnaire, and we'd love to hear the future topics that you'd want to see across the Maxon tools, whether it's C4D, Redshift, Red Giant, ZBrush, or Forger. We do genuinely read all of these comments, all of the feedback, all the suggestions that you have, because we want to basically create as much great content for you guys as possible. So we do love to hear your suggestions, and we do actually base our sessions and our workshops on your suggestions. So let us know, because yeah, we'd love to know.
Definitely.
And finally, thank you to everyone who's on here live, everyone who's catching this up.
Yeah, I'm reading the comments. Thank you. Thanks, Hannah, Neil, you know, everybody.
Yeah.
I've been reading them. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you again to you, Joe, for this incredible 6 weeks of stuff, from the project files to answering everyone's questions live and just diving into what's been such an amazing topic that, as you can see, everyone has been absolutely thrilled about, and me included. And I can't wait to go back and rewatch more of this stuff as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon. Thank you,
Yes, we'll
Ellie.
see
Thank you
all
really
on
for
the next
your
one.
help. Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
everyone.
Bye, everybody. See you later.